Very quickly before the video actually begins, I have a lot to say about my channel, and the video talking about all that will be out tomorrow. A few weeks ago, I watched this video on YouTube, and it really got me thinking. I decided to play through the game again for the first time in 5 years to see if it truly held up. For the purpose of this video, I played the original version with the original graphics. It was remastered as part of the Walking Dead collection, but I just feel like this is the best way to play the game. I'm going to be doing a brief explanation of the story. My next video will be about the 400 Days DLC. It naturally leads into Season 2, or the second game, and I plan to cover that as well. This is the biggest video I've ever made, both in terms of length and content. I've never done anything to this caliber before, so I'm sorry if the audio, the voiceover, or just the editing is a bit sloppy at times. If you haven't played this game yet, please do. It can easily be beaten within 6 to 7 hours, and those hours are some of the most emotional times I've ever had while gaming. There will be spoilers in this video for the story, so be aware. The reason being is because without the story, you won't really get anything from these games apart from really easy achievements. I will tell the story as it is told to the player, but I won't be covering every spectrum of it, as that video would be easily over an hour long and I just don't have time. The final thing before I break down the story is I want to talk about what this game means to me. I first played this game back in 2017, and it was the first game that opened my eyes to what a narrative-driven game can be. When it comes to video games, the first thing you usually notice is the cover art. This is one of my favorite cover arts of all time. When I look at it, I just think about how amazing this game is, but also how sorrowful and depressing it is at the same time, and that's something that has been lost on the franchise ever since this game came out. It was even so iconic it was completely replicated for the final season, which I might cover someday. Some would argue that Season 2 is rather sad, and like it is at points, but nothing in Season 2 grips people like certain moments in this game. I just want to be really clear very quick. I'm recording the story part of the audio over multiple days, so that's why it might sound different throughout. The game starts with Lee in the back of a police car because he's being sent to jail for killing a senator who slept with his wife. The police officer asks him questions and Lee always gives honest answers, regardless of what you pick. I know he's being taken to prison for probably a life sentence, but it seems as if the cop is almost gaining some respect for you for being so honest. In the process, as the car ride continues to go on, you can see more and more military vehicles going towards Atlanta. I love how at first it's just a single cop car, to a few cops, and then to a full-on barrage of cop cars, army jeeps, helicopters, everything. Very little does Lee or the officer know, the city has officially begun falling. The officer drives into a guy, but I mean, come on, it's a zombie show, I mean, it's obvious. The car crashes down a hill, and as Lee is coming to, you can hear the officer being attacked. Lee escapes the car and goes over to get the handcuff keys. The officer turns and starts chasing after Lee, which he has to use a shotgun on him. He walks up the hill, and as he gets swarmed with zombies, he jumps over the fence. He goes into the house to try and find some help. He ends up playing some messages on a phone. I love this little touch, by the way. There are 3 messages that get more and more frantic. You find a walkie-talkie, and this is where we first get introduced to Clementine, the poster girl of the entire series. We then run into that babysitter that Clementine and the phone were talking about. Lee falls over for the 700th time of the game and is nearly killed, until Clem comes in and gives him a hammer, in which he bashes the zombie's head in. This just goes to show that Lee isn't really ready to be a father, because he does it right in front of Clementine. After that, another police officer takes you, Clem, and Sean back to Herschel's farm. And I just want to say this now because I don't think I'll probably ever have another chance to, but Scott Wilson was the perfect choice for Herschel in the show. The Herschel in this game just feels creepy right off the bat, and that was never felt with Scott's portrayal. The next morning, you meet Kenny, Kat, and Duck. Kenny shows some signs of racism towards Lee without being direct with it, but as the game goes on, that goes away very quickly. And this is the first of many free roam segments. These are usually pretty good, apart from one I'll mention in a bit. You talk to Duck and Sean as some zombies break through the fence and eat Sean. This is the first example of something these games don't tell the player. When starting the game, it tells you that the game is tailored by how you play. Either way, if you choose to save Duck or Sean, Sean dies regardless. You get kicked off the farm and head into Macon, Lee's hometown. You run into a group of survivors that are held up in a pharmacy. You have Carly, Doug, Lily, Glenn, and Larry. The only ones I honestly really like out of this group are Glenn and Carly, but Glenn's not around for long, and Carly, well, I'll get to that later. There was a part where Lee says the word zombie, which actually really scared me. It's not scary, but it just came out of nowhere, you know?
Doug's not great around zombies.
Don't say that. What? That? What? That? Zedward, don't say it.
So when Lee said zombie, it really shook me to my core because it didn't fit there. It's like seeing something in a video game that you just weren't supposed to see, like it was hidden on purpose. This is my least favorite part of this entire game, honestly. The only good thing about it is the first time Clem and Truly get to know each other, or talk at least. It's full of little quests to do, like attend to Larry, Kenny's family, try to get a radio to work. You, Carly, and Glenn go to the nearest motel. One day you find a woman who is suicidal as she's bitten. She kills herself and you get back to the pharmacy. You sneak across the street to get the keys off of Lee's dead brother. We learned he was his brother due to a picture we found earlier on in the pharmacy. This is a really nice reveal, as Lee literally removes himself from the picture. When he's talking to his brother, he says how he feels bad for shaming the family and not being involved. After putting Lee's brother out of his misery, the zombies eventually see you. After running back into the store, all hell breaks loose, literally. Zombies are coming from everywhere, and this is where we get the first major decision of the game. Save Doug or save Carly? Larry tries to leave Lee behind, but Kenny comes in and saves you. A friendship was born. You and the group make it to the motel as you seek shelter. Glenn leaves and the motel loses power. That's the end of episode 1. It was really solid, honestly, the perfect introduction. No real threat, just being introduced to the characters. Episode 2 begins with you and a new character named Mark out hunting. In the process of Lee and Mark hunting, they hear screams in the distance and then they go check it out. It's a group of 3 guys with one of their legs stuck in a bear trap. Lee decides to cut it out due to there being no other way. You get back to the motel with everyone having different opinions about what you should do with the 3 men. You have to split up some food between your crew, which is honestly a really hard decision. After that, you go over to talk to Katja, but behind her, the teacher comes back and tries to attack her, as a zombie, obviously. After killing the zombie, it is revealed to the group that you come back no matter how you die. I love how this event happens. Out of everybody there, it's the scared little kid who reveals his bombshell to everyone else. 2 men approach the motel and want some gas or some food. They say they have a farm. Lee and a few others go to investigate it. When there, you do some basic chores here and there. When approaching the barn, Andy tells you to stay away in a very strange way. After that, you and Mark go around the perimeter to make sure it's secure. In the process, the electric fence turns on as Mark is shot with an arrow. When you get back to the house, Brenda takes him in to check on him while the other half of the group arrives. Straight away, Kenny's on edge about this place, but again, you wouldn't notice it if you weren't paying attention. You talk to Lily, and for the first time, she seems worried about other people, not just herself. Afterwards, you and Danny go out looting. You run into this camp and Lee discovers a box from the dairy. You find a tape recorder that will be important later on. A random woman approaches you with a gun and says that some men were very harsh to her and her daughter. You can kind of connect the pieces and it's disturbing. Danny shoots her in the head and the way he reacts seems like he enjoyed doing it. After you get back, you go into the barn as the kids and Katja are tending to a cow. You go to talk to Kenny and by this point he is insanely on edge with him mentioning how the back door is locked up pretty tight. Brenda informs the gang that dinner's ready, but Lee stays in the barn. He gets the door open as Andy catches him and gives him a genuinely good answer. He tells Lee that they butchered deer and other animals back there. After that, Lee walks into the house to wash his hands for dinner. He hears a noise from a secret room, and once finding the room, it is revealed that Mark is up there without legs. He tells Lee not to eat dinner. Lee runs down and informs the group that they're eating people. They get held at gunpoint and Danny knocks him out. When Lee wakes up, they are stuck in a room. In the heat of the moment, Larry suffers a heart attack and dies. After giving him CPR, you can see his lips moving a tiny bit, but then Kenny drops a salt lick on his head. That is what sends the feud between Lily and Kenny over the edge. Use some coins from Larry's pockets to get the air conditioner loose. Clementine climbs out and opens the door. Lee and Kenny sneak out and hide in a stall. When Lee opens the stall door, Danny's standing there with the rifle. Lee blocks the shot and he stabs him with a sickle, or whatever weapon you choose. I've always picked a sickle because, you would in a real life scenario. Danny tries to fight back, but he gets ambushed by Lily and she tries to stab him with the sickle after it dropped on the ground. Danny stumbles into a bear trap and you have the choice to either kill him or let him live. Whatever you choose, Clementine watches. After that, you walk into the house as Brenda has Katja hostage. That was really hard for me to say, that took multiple tries. You slowly walk towards her, making her go backwards up the stairs as zombie Mark grabs her and bites into her neck. Then comes my favorite part of this entire episode. The final showdown between Andy and Lee is a cliche mess, and I love it. Andy's about to fry Lee as Carly shoots off his ear. Lee tackles him and starts unloading punches. The thing about this that I love is you are in control of when punching him. Lee kicks him into the fence as the group leaves. When walking through the woods, you come upon a car full of supplies. Depending on what you choose, Clementine will say something. If you do end up taking the gear, which I think you do either way, Clem mentions how it's not fair. The episode ends with Lee watching the camcorder and sees that woman watching Clem. And that's it. Overall, a very slow episode with an amazing final 10 minutes. Episode 3 begins with you and Kenny going back into town for some supplies. Seeing the relationship between Kenny and Lee grow over this game is really heartwarming. Kenny makes some on-the-nose remarks about Lee's race, but in the end, Kenny looks at Lee like a true friend, maybe even a brother. They go into the pharmacy and get whatever they can. When they get back to the motel, Lily tells them that someone has been giving away their supplies. Afterwards, Carly tells Lee that he should tell everyone who he is and what he did. Lee and Carly seem to have a romance brewing, but that really sucks considering what happens. Lee finds a broken flashlight and begins looking for clues. Duck wants to join and be the Robin to his Batman, and this is the only part of the game where Duck is somewhat bearable. After finding the hidden supplies, you go talk to Lily. Some raiders attack and let some zombies in. After a really fun shooting segment, you and the rest of the group are able to make it out of there alive. While in the RV, Lily is pressuring Ben and Carly, thinking that they did it as Kenny runs over a zombie. It gets stuck in the wheel, so while Kenny's fixing it, Lily pulls out her gun and kills Carly. You leave her on the side of the road and drive off. Katja calls you over and reveals that Duck was bitten at the motel. You sit down on the couch and talk to Clementine and get this really out of nowhere scene. Clementine was bitten and attacks Lee. Of course, it's all a dream, but the next morning when Lee awakens, you run into a train. After about an hour of getting it going, solving puzzles and finding the correct tools, the group finally gets on their way. They have to stop though because the inevitable has caught up to them. Duck is turning. Katja goes into the woods with Duck and a gun. And then suddenly, a gunshot goes off. Lee and Kenny go to investigate to reveal that Katja actually killed herself. This isn't my idea, it's from this amazing video by Gaming Wins, but right here, Duck is probably dying on the inside. He just saw his own mom kill herself, and even though he can't react, he still is aware of what's happening. Lee shoots Duck to put him out of his misery, and Kenny is a lost man. When you get back to the train, you let Kenny be by himself as Lee teaches Clem how to shoot and cuts her hair. This is honestly a really nice portion of the game. The whole concept of this random guy taking this little girl under his wing and being a father figure is so heartwarming. There's a massive tanker truck hanging off a bridge and is completely in the way. Kenny snaps and starts screaming into the air. Two people on the bridge begin talking to your group. This is where we first meet Krista and Omid. Lee climbs on top of the bridge to figure out something about the tanker. They mention how there's a train station in the distance. You and Clem go to explore it. Inside you find a blowtorch, which is helpful. After killing a couple zombies, you use the blowtorch to cut the hitch of the tanker. While doing so, Ben notices a horde walking towards them. After that, the tanker crashes down and begins leaking gas. After getting back on the train, they all head towards the coast. This shot is genuinely beautiful. The city skyline being lit up by the sun as a new day approaches is such a minor detail, but is so good because zombie games are typically really dark. While Lee and Kenny are talking, a voice comes over Clementine's walkie-talkie. And there we go. That's the end of episode 3. A really good episode with the most heartbreak in the entire game so far. It had the death of Carly, we left Lily behind, and of course the elephant in the room, Cat and Duck are both dead. Up to this point, this is the most loss that the group has suffered, and there's so much more to come. Episode 4 begins with the group walking through the streets when one of the church bells goes off. In the process, both Ben and Clementine get trapped in a corner as Ben runs away. Just as Clementine's about to die, in comes Chuck to save the day. However, after that, your group and Chuck end up getting separated as you seek shelter in a house. Lee notices that the door has a doggy door on it, but it's a locked system. After thinking, he digs up the dog that was buried in the backyard. He takes the dog collar off and unlocks the door. Not being able to reach the doorknob, Clem just kind of goes in there and opens the door anyways. After searching the house to make sure it's safe, Ben tells you need to get up to Kenny right now. Kenny is in the attic staring at a little boy zombie. This part is honestly really hard to watch, and it's really sad. Seeing the little boy's body just struggling to stand up then falling over, he was hiding in the attic and then starved to death. I kind of feel like Kenny saw this as a sign that this is what would have happened to Duck if Lee didn't do what he did. After putting him out of his misery, you bury him alongside his dog. Very heartfelt. Just then though, when Lee looks up, there's a strange person standing out there. He yells at him as he runs off, alerting everyone in the group. Afterwards, you and Kenny go to the coast looking for a boat. The only boat to be seen is one that is already half submerged. In the distance, Lee sees this person climbing down a building. After they get up closer, he sneaks up behind him. It's a woman named Motley. Just as she's about to kill Lee, Clem ends up saving him. This is where you learn about Crawford, a horrible place that thankfully fell. He gets trapped in an alleyway, so the only way to escape is to go through the sewers. You see zombies feasting on someone's body. It looks familiar. Lee walks up to it and finds out that it's Chuck. Chuck died protecting your group. And honestly, for such a small role that he has in this game, his death really carries and it feels really impactful. If it weren't for him, Clem would have died. After that, Lee attempts to climb a ladder, but he falls, also knocking a sign off the wall. After pulling the sign away, he goes into a secret bunker. He opens the door and comes face to face with the group. In the process of being held at gunpoint, Lee constantly denies that he's not from Crawford. After all that, a new character, Vernon, helps you out of the sewers as you return to the house. You try to find Clementine. Turns out she was in the shed as she found a boat. All it needs is a battery and some gas. They head into Crawford for the correct materials. Lee heads into the alleyway as he runs into Molly. You get into this garage and steal a battery from one car. In the process, the alarm goes off and draws a bunch of zombies inside of the garage. After shooting out the glass roof and escaping, you get back to the school as Kenny and Bree are back with the gas. The zombies are breaking through the door as you jam the hatchet in the door handle. You head over to the nurse's office and see a group of zombies outside the door. After clearing them all out, you get into the nursery as Vernon and Krista are still in there. After finding out the passcode for the cabinet, you run into Ben. He is holding the hatchet that was barricading the door. Now with all the zombies pouring into the school, they all flee to the classroom. Almost as it seems too late, they're able to get the door open as Ben tells Kenny what happened at the motel. He tells Kenny that he was the reason that Kat and Duck died. Tyler Chase and Gavin Hammond do such a great performance as Ben and Kenny to the point where you can hear the passion and anger from Gavin Hammond. After the tiff, they go into the armory and there's nothing there, only a staircase that goes up towards the church bell. And after a really fun shooting segment, you get this. The first true choice that determines the character's death. I saved him because I didn't want any more losses for the group. You get back to the house and Vernon tells you that he should take Clementine with him. At this very moment, the relationship between Clem and Lee was at the highest it had ever been. Lee gets very understandably angry at him. He goes to talk to Clem as he tells her that there's no time to find her parents. She gets upset, obviously, and falls asleep. When Lee wakes up, she is nowhere to be found. Neither is anyone else. He goes out in the street and finds her walkie-talkie in the road. He goes to pick it up as a zombie lunges at his arm. After picking up the walkie-talkie and her hat, it's revealed that he was bitten. I love how when Lee holds the hat, you can also see the bite in the same image. It's so perfect. Kenny and the group get back, and if you show the bite, Kenny is visually distraught. Lee, Krista, and Omid go back to where Vernon's group was. It's completely empty when they show up. Clem calls on the walkie, and she's being held captive by a very creepy-sounding man. And this is where the episode ends. If it seems like I was lazy during this part of the video, rather it be the voiceover, the editing, whatever, it's because I was. Episode 4 is by far the worst in the game, with some really boring sections and characters. It kind of feels like a large part of this episode was drawn out just to elongate the final episode, which is nearly perfect. Here we go, on to the final episode, and in my opinion, the best episode in this game. Episode 5 starts with a beautiful visual of that massive zombie herd we saw earlier on beginning to take over the city. The stranger on the walkie uses Clem as a ploy to lure Lee to his location. After getting an elevator open, Lee faints on the ground. He wakes up just as Krista is about to cut off his arm. He tells him not to as they go into the elevator shaft and climb a ladder to the top. Halfway up, however, Lee ends up fainting again and gets his leg stuck in one of the rungs. Using a church bell to draw away the zombies, Lee, Krista, and Omid climb down a fire escape. You make it back to the house and see the shed is barricaded for some reason. When opening it, Kenny and Ben are stuck inside, with no boat to be found. This is where we learn that Vernon and his crew stole the boat and beat up Kenny and Ben before locking them in the shed. Right here is why I chose to save Ben instead of dropping him. This line is the best line this character ever gets, and it truly lets the player understand the mental space he's in. You get back inside the house as zombies are starting to pour in. You make it upstairs, and with the help of Kenny, you move a massive desk to block off the hallway. I really enjoy this part, it's just genuinely fun. I'll probably be saying that a few more times throughout this video. The way this is set up, it kind of feels like a final standoff, but it's not. Because after running out of ammo, they go into the attic and are stuck there. Lee gets angry at Kenny for not really caring about Clementine and picks up a statue. It almost looks like he's going to hit Kenny with it, but he throws it at the wall behind him, revealing that the wall is pretty much rotted out. Each member of the crew helps break it and more until they can crawl through. They get into another house and see a couple on the bed, dead. That they took their own lives, not being able to witness anything of the new world. They jump from the balcony onto the next building. As Ben jumps, though, he falls to the ground. Kenny, not being able to just let Ben die, he goes down there as Lee goes after him. It's revealed that Ben was impaled by a piece of metal. And now with the alley pouring with zombies, Kenny locks Lee behind a gate. He uses the last bullet he had to spare Ben's life, as that was Ben's biggest fear, is being eaten by a zombie. He runs off, and that's the last we see of him. Apparently, he died in the horde. He gets back to the roof and informs Krista and Omid of what just happened. After crossing some rooftops, they come upon a metal sign. While Lee's climbing across, it falls apart, leaving him with only one way down. Krista and Omid try to tell him not to do it, but Lee basically says, look, I'm already bit, what's the worst that can happen? He goes to the ground and we get a super cool sequence. With a great soundtrack, Lee fights his way through the street to get to the hotel. When he goes into the room that the man was in, he is held at gunpoint by him. They have a very heartfelt conversation about hurting ones they loved. Clem sneaks up on him and hits him with a glass bottle. Him and Lee battle it out until he's strangling Lee. While he's on top strangling Lee, Clem ends up shooting him in the head. Lee opens the door and a zombie is standing right there. However, the zombie doesn't react. This is either because of Lee's smell or the bite that was camouflaging him. Either way, he kills it and covers Clem in the guts. They walk through the street as Clem sees her parents. Lee faints, but when he wakes up, Clem was able to get him into a secure building. And right here is where this whole, super sad scene begins. Lee tells her what's going on with him and how he was bit. After getting the door open, she grabs the handcuffs to ensure that Lee doesn't attack her, just in case. She reaches for the gun, but the zombie falls to the ground and reaches for her legs. Lee hands her the baseball bat as she kills the zombie. I'm not sure, but I believe this is her first zombie kill. Then comes the most powerful, miserable, and just downright depressing moments in all of video game history. He tells Clementine that he will miss her and how proud of her he is. She slowly raises the gun and reluctantly pulls the trigger. Just wow. I would say this is probably one of, if not my saddest experiences ever playing a game. Even though I knew what the ending was before playing it again for this video, it still really got to me. The rest of that day, all I could think about was that ending. We get a post-credit scene of Clementine walking through the countryside. She sits on a log as she sees two silhouettes in the distance. They walk for a while until they notice her and stop. It's Krista and Omid, but it never tells you that. This end credit scene is honestly one of my favorite parts of the game. No music, no dialogue, just the sounds of nature. Everything about the way it's lit to the drama of it all, it's the perfect ending cutscene. I like to think that the sunny setting is there to represent Clem's new life, now that her father figure is dead, and her parents are too. Everything about the ending is held up even higher with the song Take Us Back. Just reading all that off the script, I can hear the song in my head, and it's so, it's the perfect song for this game. And there we go. The Walking Dead Season 1 is one of the most well-crafted video games of all time. Very similar to BioShock, the graphics may be a turnoff to some people, but I will always say, art design is more important than graphics. There is so much I love about this game. The awesome and well-written characters, the heart-wrenching story, the culmination of all the events are also perfectly done, and that's so rare. I made a video a while back about BioShock, and how I said it's almost perfect. I said how there was something missing that I couldn't point out. When it comes to The Walking Dead Season 1, it's literally perfect. Even with the boring parts like episode 4 and some random sections here and there, the ending makes it all worth it. A few moments I really loved were the first person shooting sections, the final stand, the scenery of Clem walking through the countryside, and many other minute details. I also love how the episodes are titled with the events in the mind. Episode 1 is called A New Day, meaning it's a new day and a new world for Lee. Episode 2 is called Starved for Help because the cannibals tricking them into their way of living. Episode 3 is called Long Road Ahead because it deals with the most losses in the entire game, with Carly, Duck, and Cat all dying. Episode 4 is called Around Every Corner due to the horde that rushes in. And then Episode 5, No Time Left, as Lee's bit and imminent fate looms on him. There are a few things I didn't mention that I probably should have. In the editing process, there were a couple mistakes I made with the way the story plays out, and I would have went back and fixed them, but this video took over a month to edit. It took me so long. It's just the really little things that this game does that makes me love it so much. My next Walking Dead video will be on the 400 Days DLC. It leads into Season 2, and I think it's overall pretty forgotten. And the reason for the long wait between videos is the length of this one. And I have a video coming out tomorrow going over what I want to do with my channel and stuff. Anyways, for the maybe 2 people who made it to the end, I just want to say thank you so much. If anyone's actually hearing this or watching this, I just want to say I appreciate it so much. The support that my Fallout 4 and Chernobylite videos got is unreal. Over 150 views but each, and that's so ridiculous to me. So I just want to say thank you so much. And like I said, I have a video coming out tomorrow that is going to be touching on some stuff. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Bye.